What you know, Alibis? Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. It's Monday, August 18th. Hope you guys had a good day. We are going to jump into episode 2 of the Idaho State Police documents that were recently released. Before we get started, if you're not subscribed on YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Liking the video is one of the easiest ways to support the podcast. And if you want notifications of when I post new content, just click that little bell icon. I appreciate all y'all. I want to start out with an interview of a person who was friends with the roommates because she did a really beautiful job of describing their personalities and sort of bringing them to life for us. We focus so much on the horrific tragedy that happened to these 4 beautiful young people, and we don't hear enough about them, so I wanted to start with this tonight. She said Kaylee was a very funny person. She was a prankster, very hardworking, and had positive energy. Maddie was very loving and was a genuine person. She was social and very outgoing. She could be sassy and strong-minded. She was protective of others and would tell others to back off if they were inappropriate or unwanted. Xana was very energetic. She had a positive energy. She was hardworking, nice, and a genuine person. She would tell the absolute truth, and she was totally nice but a fighter. She would address issues if needed. She said Xana and Ethan were very good together, and together they were fun and the life of the party. Ethan was easygoing, a very social person, easy to talk to. He was goofy and likable. She said he and Xana were never far apart, and they had a great relationship. Kaylee and Maddie were the moms of the group at the house. Xana was the fun sibling, and she and another roommate were the young ones and enjoyed hanging out with all the others. And then we move into another part of her interview. She thinks Xana had been to the Washington State University campus to visit someone. Before the murders, Kaylee claimed to have seen that shadowy figure watching her from that vegetated area behind the house, and it freaked her out. She had also told the roommates about a stalker at somewhere in Moscow. Wherever it is redacted. She said she doesn't know why her friends were murdered, but speculated it could have been out of rejection or somebody with a hurt ego. She thinks if Maddie or Kaylee were approached by an unwanted person, Maddie would have told him to back off or go away. She believes the killer could have been a stalker. So let's move on to the search warrant at BK's residence at school. They found black-colored gloves, kind of like the ones you see in hospitals. There were receipts including Walmart and Marshall's. The Marshall's receipts show purchases on August 31st of 22 and September 19th. Both visits, he bought gourmet food for just a little over $3 each. He bought some cold treatment, and it looks like men's clothing. In the residence, they collected a dust canister from a Bissell vacuum, 8 potential hair strands from a broom, possible animal hair, and several other hairs from inside the shower, on the tile, and inside the shower drain. They took a computer and also a DNA swab from a red-colored flake on the countertop in the kitchen. They took red and brown stains on pillowcases, and also the mattress cover had multiple red-brown colored stains. As far as his office at the university, it was empty, and nothing of evidentiary value was found. On November 13th, 2022, and this was after the murders, he spent $52.85 at a gas station. One Washington State University employee said BK spent a lot of time at a bookstore called The Bookie, which is on campus. They interviewed a student employee. He said BK was annoying and he wanted him to leave every time he came through his line. He said he's not fond of customers who talk too much. He would ask for a discount. For example, he would order an Americano but ask for a brewed coffee price. He felt like BK was flirting and zeroing in on a certain female, and he said that he was bad at flirting. In his opinion, the woman was just too polite, which he thought BK interpreted as her flirting back. He would tell BK that this girl was on the phone when he would come in so that she wouldn't have to interact with him. He said she was too polite to ask him to do this, but the man said he did it on his own because he felt if he were a woman who was receiving unwanted attention, he would want someone to do that for him. Let's move on to interviews with other employees at the Mag Greek restaurant where Xana and Maddie worked. They had worked there for around 2 years, and Maddie was a reliable employee who was very well liked. A lot of this next section is redacted, but it says that Xana would call in sick, but she got better over the past year and was well liked. She said both girls were sweet in nature, but she didn't know them well outside of work. Maddie ran the Instagram for the restaurant and says she's unaware of anything unusual happening to the girls at the restaurant or in their personal lives. Another interview was with a male employee. He did not interact with them outside of work. He says either Xana or Maddie said they had a stalker, but he could not remember which one said it. In another interview with a female employee, she also did not hang out with them outside of work and only worked with Xana. She said the previous house Xana lived in was a rough environment for her, but things got better once she moved out and into the 1122 King Road residence. She thinks Xana told coworkers that she had a stalker, but she didn't hear that from Xana personally. She only heard about it after the murders. They had an issue at the King Road residence with the furnace. So on December 5th, an investigator hired someone to come repair the furnace because when the investigator went in, the temperature in the house was in the 40s. He stayed with the worker, and that worker never left the first floor. On December 7th, they began packing the belongings of the victims. Due to chemical and biological contamination, they were not able to get all of Xana's belongings. They packed up most of the items in her closet and various items located in and around her desk area that appeared to be financial or sentimental value, such as currency, graphing calculators, car keys, identification cards, gift cards, and personal notes. They counted $172.21 in cash and coins. That was found in a backpack as well as in the desk drawer. They photographed the money along with Xana's Arizona driver's license, her University of Idaho card, a Chick-fil-A gift card, and 2 Amazon gift cards. They put them into a box with her other belongings. They also packed up the personal belongings in Maddie's room that didn't appear to have chemical or biological contamination. He said, "We gathered items of perceived sentimental value, such as her cowboy boots, wall art, personal notes, pictures, and a mirror." The others' personal belongings were packed by other investigators. Moving on to an interview with an inmate who was in jail with BK in the Latah County Jail after his arrest. He thinks BK was placed in their pod a few days after New Year's Day. After arriving in their pod, BK immediately sat down and watched the news about his arrest. He watched multiple channels covering the story, and he said, "Wow, I'm on every channel." He said BK was very quiet, and it was awkward having him in the pod. He said he was highly intelligent and analytical, always trying to figure out what you were doing, but didn't know common knowledge things like the difference between 2 muscle cars. He said BK's eyes were creepy, but other than that, he seemed like a pretty normal guy. They didn't talk often, but when they did, it was just casual small talk. He said BK would use 3 standard-sized bars of soap per week due to his hour-long showers and his excessive hand washing, and his hands were red from the amount of hand washing. BK told him his favorite movie was American Psycho with Christian Bale. Another inmate interview, he was housed with BK from January to February 15th of 2023. He said he enjoyed watching news about his case unless it began talking about his family or friends, at which point he would change the channel immediately. As time went on, he stopped watching news related to his case almost completely. He said he analyzed everything. He wanted to know why people had preferences on anything, and he psychoanalyzes everything. He said BK spent most of his time on his tablet talking with people, and typically his is redacted, but I think it's safe to say it was Mother. Whoever he was talking to, he told them to obtain an attorney after he had seen something which is redacted on the news. In addition to showering every day, he also wanted clean sheets and clean clothes every day. He said BK was smart, easy to get along with, but very hard to talk to because he talked over him with his vocabulary as well as topics of conversation. He also talked about his education a lot. He said BK loves baseball and the Yankees are his favorite team. He liked to watch court TV, and get this, he was very interested in the Alec Murdaugh trial. This next interview is interesting. Another inmate had spoken with a reporter saying he overheard this man that's about to be interviewed tell his attorney he knew BK. He was also at Washington State University at the same time and that they were friends. He said he also knew Ethan because they were in the same fraternity. Now, the man being interviewed, according to investigators, was curt, angry, and initially unwilling to talk. But after he was advised of the purpose of the contact, he did give minimal details. He says a cellmate in the jail overheard him tell his attorney he knew Ethan, but fabricated the rest of the information regarding his connection to BK. He said he did know Ethan, but only casually due to their membership in the Sigma Chi fraternity, but obviously they were in different chapters since he went to Washington State University and Ethan was at the University of Idaho. He last saw Ethan at a party several weeks before the homicides, but really couldn't remember any additional details. He says he never met BK or had any connection with him. He was unwilling to be interviewed in person or again due to the frustration with the incident as well as his full schedule. He later reached out to the investigator complaining that his family and friends were being harassed by a reporter with the Daily Mail. They referred him to the local police there in Pullman. Going back to some interviews with Washington State University employees, one, her job is she investigates and provides education, mediation, and other disciplinary-focused responses to complaints or reports made by members of the student body, and specifically if those complaints have a discriminatory nexus. Her department facilitates group educational classes when asked by faculty leadership. Now, in this interview, she had legal restrictions placed on her by the university about BK and was only able to answer some questions in general terms and nothing that was directly specific. She never interacted with BK, but was in receipt of 13 reports made pertaining to his behavior, and that was it for her. Another interview with staff, a woman who had been at the university for over 35 years and in her current position for 11 and a half. She interacted with BK on a regular basis, and he was frequently in her office as her undergrad assistant. And she echoed what many others stated, that he would stand at her desk or stand behind her, staring over her shoulder as she worked. She had somebody escort her to her car daily because his behavior was of concern. She said BK's closest peer would on occasion insert himself between the two of them as a distraction. In an interview with another student, BK was her teaching assistant. She mentioned BK said he had a background in the military. He was quiet and didn't engage with the class unless he was asked to by the professor. She exchanged emails with him regarding a final paper and held a Zoom meeting with him on December 9th, 2022 with 2 or 3 other students from the class. So this is after the homicides. BK left his camera off during the meeting, and she said students tend to leave theirs off, but it was unusual for a teaching assistant and professors to do so. She said his attitude during that Zoom call was chatty, upbeat, and he seemed nicer than he had in prior interactions. The next interview is with someone in the master's program and also in the same cohort as BK. She interacted with him in mutual classes for 3 hours per day and talked about interactions in her office that she shared with 3 other people. She said he always seemed to focus his attention towards her office mate, which made the woman uncomfortable. They would try to keep the door shut to keep him out. She tried to be civil when speaking to him, but he tended to be aggressive and upfront, specifically with female colleagues. He engaged in unsolicited debates and arguments on topics she felt weren't up for debate. One incident in class was where the topic of eyewitness misidentification was being discussed. A student was explaining her viewpoints due to her background on the topic, but BK was agitated and argumentative because he didn't agree with her explanation. Another classmate defended her to BK and tried to stop the debate. She told BK his arguing was mansplaining when speaking to the other student. Now, he didn't understand what mansplaining meant, but disagreed he was engaging in that fashion. The exchange made the first student upset and uncomfortable and left her not wanting to interact further with BK. She filed a written complaint to the Civil Rights and Compliance Group regarding the mansplaining incident. Her goal was to create documentation of the mansplaining incident should further issues arise. She attended 2 events off campus with BK. The one was at the apartment where all the cohorts got together and he stayed for about an hour. The second time was at the Paradise Creek Brewery where he had a bottle of wine to himself and seemed to be focused on a female server. She didn't share any social media with him, but he often referred to the Wazoo Reddit page. In the weeks leading up to Thanksgiving break, she noticed he got up more often in class to get coffee, which is inappropriate for a grad student to behave that way. He also consistently wore the puffy down coat in class for several hours. He never made friends and confided to someone in November he wished he was in a relationship. He expressed interest in female members of the cohort, but nothing materialized, and he flirted with another woman until he learned she was married. They had the tally board in their office tracking his tardies and also one for each time he made discriminating comments to the cohort members. She said after Thanksgiving break, he was quieter, and she thought it was because his behavior was being accounted for, and that was causing the lack of engagement. At the department Christmas party, she said she talked with BK regarding classes, and her impression was that he would be returning for spring semester. In class, she sat to his left about 3 feet away, and after Thanksgiving break, she saw injuries to his left hand while they were in class. She said it was bruised knuckles, and the redness was halfway up the back of the left hand from his knuckles, and he also had a cut on his ring finger knuckle. He told her he was a boxer, and she said he did not try to hide that injured hand. He told the cohorts that he wanted to be a professor, and she said with a chuckle, he really liked to teach people things. He genuinely tried and wanted to be friends with people, but he didn't know how. He would come to her office and sit next to her, leaving her stuck talking to him. He never shared information about his personal life. The next interview is with a man who was in the PhD program for sociology, but occasionally would attend criminal justice classes. He would sit directly to the right of BK. He recounted that whole mansplaining incident and also a conversation with BK outside the classroom, but about class topics. The man told BK he needed to leave to cook dinner for his fiancée, to which BK said, "You look really happy to be doing that. Most guys I know hate making food for their women." The man said he found that comment to be weird. He said BK was the black sheep of the cohort and very much to himself. Another interview was with a female who had one class with him. At the beginning of the semester, everyone sat close together, but eventually everybody started spacing out. And she thinks that was to distance themselves from BK. In her office, they would leave the door open so a woman whose office was across from them would have somewhere to go if he went into her office. Now, she personally didn't have any negative interactions with him. The next interview is with a male student. He said in late October or early November, BK offered to give him a ride home in that white Elantra. He said they spent nearly 3 hours in conversation. He said BK would socially engineer his conversation and talking points to integrate himself within a group. For instance, he was discussing sports, and when the man indicated he had no interest in sports, BK said he had very little interest in sports himself. He told the man he had nobody he could have guy talks with, and he briefly talked about women and dating. BK said he could pick up any woman he wanted in bars and clubs. He felt BK didn't view value in women and saw them more as articles. He said he felt like he was verbally kidnapped as BK continued to want to talk. BK moved the conversation to social media and its impact on society issues. They discussed how people aligned themselves within social media bubbles, which became echo chambers. He discussed politics and indicated he had predominantly conservative household values where traditional gender roles applied. In his interactions with him, BK never discussed home, family, or friends, but did talk about his educational experiences at his previous college. He also discussed his professor who had written many notable books and articles on the BTK killer, which is Dennis Rader. He said BK was focused but arrogant. He wanted all of his classmates to know he was the smartest guy in the room and wanted to highlight his academic prowess. He said female members of the class had this innate ability to see things like character traits in people that are not often recognized by men. They voiced BK made them uncomfortable, made them feel unsafe, and they thought he was creepy. The man said he was close to filing a report to the university about his behavior in the latter part of November of 2022, but he didn't because the reports are not anonymous. He said BK's lack of sleep was very apparent. He was late to lectures, and he would frequently get up mid-lecture, leave, and come back with coffee. Another interview with a female staff member at the university, she said BK was selected for the criminal justice program by a panel that she was not on. She was assigned a role that is redacted for his doctoral program. She said she only had one interaction with him in that role, and that was in August of 2022 when she started receiving complaints about him from students and staff in the program. Because of the complaints, she spent a lot of time, at least once a week, speaking about him during different disciplinary meetings, and those meetings focused around his interactions with postgraduate students, both in and outside of the classroom, along with his behavior around some of the professors. She said he appeared to be very socially awkward, but she also said a lot of academics are socially awkward. But the various complaints about how he spoke to other staff and students and his stating of outspoken, discriminating comments which were homophobic, ableist, xenophobic, and misogynistic in nature. He would also stare at people and stand uncomfortably close or lean over women, which made them very uncomfortable. She did bring BK to her office to speak with him about the complaints and attempted to get him to correct his behavior. But his response to this was deflection of personal responsibility, saying that his comments had been misunderstood. He told her he hoped to continue working in the program and his desire to remain in the field of academia. He told her he wished to work under a name that's redacted because of their field of expertise in sex offenses and decision-making processes of offenders. In other interviews, he was described as homophobic, pretentious. When he met another classmate, she told him what topic she was researching, so he proceeded to explain the subject of her research to her. Others say he had a flat affect and stared into nothing. An investigator reached out to the DMV regarding BK changing his plates from Pennsylvania to Washington. They did see video with audio of the transaction. The worker remembered him and said he was a super nice guy, very charming, and in fact, she added him to the DMV's Christmas card list. She said he was in gloves the entire time, but she didn't think anything of it because of the cold temperatures they had at the time. The last bit we're going to talk about, someone who was interviewed talked about being at a school potluck right before winter break, and BK was there. She really didn't interact with him, but does remember him looking at the food and saying, "It doesn't look like there's anything I can eat." She said he wore all black and black gloves. And she said it was cold outside, but everybody else took theirs off once they got inside. At one point, a man at the potluck stood up from the table and BK stared at him the entire time he was standing. And another employee said that her maternal instinct would kick in and not allow herself to leave when BK was in the office around a certain woman whose name was redacted. So I'll keep going through these files. I'm still doing the Donna Adelson crash course. I put out episode 1 today if you're looking to follow that trial when it starts later this week. So we'll see what the week brings and how many more of these I can get out. But that's it for today. Hope you guys have a good rest of your evening, and we will see you soon.